So here's what we're going to do today. Again, I'm going to keep this short, hopefully less than 10 minutes. We're going to keep this short. We're going to go over, this is what we did in class today. We did the corrupt bargain questions. We did those together. I would much rather you understand it than just do it and then kind of go back over it. I'd rather you understand it because we need to understand what is important about the election process, how it has safeguards against itself. But also how it can be taken advantage of. Okay, so we're just going to talk about the election of 1824 today, which is what you opened right here. So after James Monroe, I'm going to go through this whole thing again. I'm trying to make it 10 minutes, and you stop telling you that because then it's going to go over 10 minutes. Okay, James Monroe serves his presidency. He is the fifth president of the United States from 1816 to 1824. So a new president is going to be elected in 1824. At this point, there are only two political parties. There's the Democratic Republicans. They are going to split eventually. And the Federalists. The Federalists are kind of becoming phased out. So it's really just the Democratic Republicans. All four candidates, there are four candidates in the election of 1824. All four of them are from the Democratic Republican Party. Okay? Now, what's going to happen is the Democratic Republican Party is going to kind of split amongst itself. There's going to be factions created within the party. And so let's look at the corrupt bargain. All right. You should have already looked at this. I hope you're looking at this. I hope you've looked at this and then watched the video. I don't know. So, anyways, four candidates ran serious campaigns and received support from the sections of the country which they represented. Okay, so let's look at those four candidates. We have John Quincy Adams from New England. New England being Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, like those states up there. Rhode Island, even like New York a little bit. All right, anyways, John Quincy Adams. We have Henry Clay. He's from the West. The West at this point in time, I'm looking at my map, like Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, like those places, okay? William Crawford from the Southeast. Southeast, we're talking about like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. I guess maybe Alabama. Then we have the Southwest. The reason I said maybe Alabama is because Andrew Jackson would have somewhat had some support there. Southwest, we're talking about like Louisiana. We're talking about Arkansas. We're talking about Mississippi. And yeah, Alabama is kind of in between there. Here's what they are most known for. So John Quincy Adams is most known for being Secretary of State to James Monroe. He's also, if you didn't know, is the son of John Adams, our second president. Henry Clay is known for being the Speaker of the House. William Crawford is known for being James Monroe's Secretary of Treasury and Secretary of War at different times. And then Andrew Jackson is most known for being the hero of the Battle of New Orleans. So the first question was, who is the most politically qualified and why? Okay. Hopefully, again, you've went over this. The Secretary of State position is one of the highest positions in government. And John Quincy Adams, also being the son of a president, is thought to have the most political experience and be most qualified. And I gave you the reason why. Who is the least qualified? Well, politically speaking, it's Andrew Jackson because he is not known as a politician. While he did have some political experience, people know him from being a war hero. That is what they know him as. That is how he campaigns. So there we go. All right, election tightly contested, but looks like a winner emerges. So we look at this right here, look at the popular vote, the electoral vote. Again, the electoral vote is what really matters. Popular vote matters, but it only matters within the state. So what does that mean? That means that whoever gets the most popular votes in a state wins the electoral votes of that state. But it is very possible and has happened on several occasions to lose the popular vote but win the electoral college. That has happened. It will happen again, more than likely, at some point. So who received the most popular votes? Well, that's pretty easy. This is not a trick question. It's Andrew Jackson. Who received the most electoral votes? Again, not a trick question. Andrew Jackson. Let's go to the next one. So the issue here is, well, let's go ahead and look at Amendment 12 because there is an issue. Because if we look at this, Andrew Jackson won the most popular votes. Andrew Jackson won the most electoral votes. He has the most, so he must be the president. Congratulations, Andrew Jackson. You are our sixth president. That is not the case, though. So here's where the 12th Amendment comes in. So let's actually look at this first. So in 1824, sorry, my hair is all jacked up. I know. So in 1824, the total number of electoral college votes equals 261. How we decide a president is based on receiving the majority of electoral votes. The majority is not most. That majority does not equal most. Majority is over half. Okay, that's what majority means. So over half. So if you watch the most recent presidential election, you saw that the president has to receive 270 electoral college votes out of a total of 538. Now, how do they get that number 270? Well, because the president must have the majority. So what does that mean? It means take 538, split it in half. You get, 269? Okay, but that's half. But majority is not half. It is more than half. So you take majority. You can't have half a vote. Majority plus 1. And what do you get? You get 270. Now, in 1824, the total number of electoral college votes equaled 261. It's an odd number. So you don't even really have to add 1. You just have to add half because you can't have half a vote. So 261 divided by 2. What is that? 130.5. Okay? You just need over half. So anything over that will get you the number of votes you need. So in our case, we only need to add 0.5. So 130.5 plus 0.5 is 131. That's how many votes you got to have. None of these candidates get 131. So the 12th Amendment comes into play. The 12th Amendment says, if no person having such a majority of electoral votes, then from the persons having the highest numbers not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. Butchered that. So what does that mean? If nobody has a majority, you take the top 3, and then the House of Representatives picks from them. So let's go down. So why is the section of the 12th Amendment relevant? Well, because no one has a majority. How many electoral votes were needed to win the election of 1824? We just answered that, 131. Which candidate received the majority of electoral college votes? Trick question. Nobody did. Number 8. Man, this happens every time. Let's see if I can just throw something in the air. Let's throw this. Worked. Boom. So let's see. Number 8. Once the general election results were known, who was given authority under the Constitution to choose the president in 1824? That is the House of Representatives. Very good. All right. So number 9. I asked you to review the backgrounds of the candidates for presidency. Number 9 asked that any of the candidates seem to be in a position of influence now the House of Representatives would choose the next president. So if we go back up here, we see, okay, does any of these people have something to do with the House of Representatives? I see one. Do you see it? Who is the Speaker of the House? It is Henry Clay. Speaker of the House is the leader of the House of Representatives. They speak for the House of Representatives. So number 9 is going to be Henry Clay. Number 10, under the 12th Amendment, who was disqualified from running in the House election and why? So it can only be the top 3, right? That's what we said. That's going to be our reason why. So it can only be the top 3. Who is the 4th? Electoral votes is what matters. 37, Henry Clay is the Speaker of the House, but he cannot become the president because they only take the top 3. So Henry Clay is disqualified, but he does have a position of influence. Now, I'm just going to summarize this. So, all right, Henry Clay is eliminated because he didn't have enough votes. William Crawford is also essentially eliminated because he has a stroke. He has a stroke right before the general election. And so Congress does not feel good about putting or electing someone in that poor physical condition because, he can't walk well, he can't speak very well. I mean, it's unfortunate, but you got to understand why this is the case. If they would have put William Crawford, as the president, I don't think the American public would have been happy because they would see this as like a power grab by the legislative branch and putting somebody in power that can't necessarily, due to their medical health, perform that job. So then the legislative branch have to pick up some of the slack, and that gives them too much power. So it comes down to Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams. So why were William Crawford and Henry Clay not contenders? They're both eliminated. Clay for not receiving enough votes. Crawford for, again, having a stroke. Why was Henry Clay still of great use to the remaining candidates? Well, because he's Speaker of the House. And guess what? Speaker of the House, he works with the people that are going to elect the next president. He works with them. He talks with them. He knows them personally. He has influence because he is essentially, again, their leader. Number 13. Despite his constitutional elimination from the race in 1824, was there any way in which Henry Clay could benefit politically from the situation in which he found himself? Yes, he could. You don't know why? Because there's a position that he has his eye on. We're going to scroll down. Well, we're going to try to scroll down. Yeah, we're going to scroll down right here. So Henry Clay has his eye on a particular position. Here are the first 5 presidents in order, okay? We'll go through this. We have Washington. We have Adams. We have Jefferson. We have Madison. And we have Monroe. So here's the thing. Here's why Henry Clay can still benefit from this. All right, George Washington's the first president, so very unique circumstances, so we're not going to include him in this. All right, position they held prior to becoming president. John Adams, vice president. Thomas Jefferson, he was first Secretary of State and then became vice president. Okay? James Madison, you know what he was before he became president? Secretary of State. Oh, you know what James Monroe was before he became president? Secretary of State. Scroll down a little bit. You know what John Quincy Adams? So JQA, you know what he was? Secretary of State. And Jackson, well, he's just Tennessee congressman. All right. So when you look at this, there's a reason why Secretary of State. So when you look at the presidential line of succession, so that means like who takes over if something happens to the president. First, we know is the vice president. After that, do you know who it is? Do you know? Some of you are probably saying, oh, it's Secretary of State. That's why it's a big deal. No, it's not Secretary of State. It's not Secretary of State. It's actually Speaker of the House. You know why? Because Secretary of State is not an elected position. Instead, you are not elected to become Secretary of State. You know what happens? Instead, you are appointed. And you know who you are appointed by? The president. So, what looks to be the stepping stone position to the presidency? Secretary of State 1, Secretary of State 2, Secretary of State 3. If John Quincy Adams becomes the president, that'll be 4 people in a row that have had Secretary of State and then became the next president. Who do you think Henry Clay is going to throw his support behind, and why? Well, he can potentially benefit from this because he wants to be Secretary of State. So let's read this last part. After a lengthy private conference with John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay threw his support behind John Adams. The House of Representatives elected Adams to the presidency on February 9th, 1825. 3 days later, President-elect Adams formally offered the position of Secretary of State to who other than Henry Clay. The supporters of Jackson were mad, son. They were mad. They accused Adams and Clay of entering into a corrupt bargain, which is why this is called what it is, through which Adams had purchased the presidency from Henry Clay. Jackson, they claimed, had been cheated. Here's what Jackson said about him. You're going to answer number 14 and 15 on your own, but here's what they said. Here's what Andrew Jackson said about Henry Clay. He said, "So you see, the Judas of the West has closed the contract and will receive 30 pieces of silver. His end will be the same." To understand this quote, we got to look a little bit back in biblical history. Judas, in biblical history, again, Judas was an apostle of Jesus, a disciple of Jesus, a follower of Jesus that betrayed Jesus, turned him over to the government so that he could be executed for 30 pieces of silver. And you know what happened to Judas? Well, Judas died an excruciating death. And this is the same thing that Andrew Jackson says is going to happen to Henry Clay. Elections are fun to talk about, especially in retrospect. Everything's more fun to talk about in retrospect, at least when it comes to history. You can analyze it. You can analyze history only in retrospect. What does retrospect mean? It means in the past. Time has to pass. That's why I don't like talking modern politics, especially in like class, because we can't analyze anything that's going on right now. Come on. We can't analyze anything. What seems to be good sometimes isn't. What seems to be bad sometimes isn't. But we can look back at history and at least, maybe not come to exact terms or come to, find something that is 100% one way or the other. But we have a much clearer view in retrospect than we do in the present. All right. Hope you did well. You answered number 14 and 15, both kind of 14 is opinionated and 15 is just kind of asking for a summary. So do that for me. Sorry, I'm yawning. Do that for me. Turn in, get 100. Boom. Good deal.